So I'm here to talk about stuff that you wouldn't typically hear, which is the last mile of our food waste. We're living in a society where we're so sterile and so clean that we don't want to deal with our own waste, so we tend to outsource everything. It's the same with the city. Just a quick summary of our waste systems in Ottawa. We have the green bin municipal compost for residential homes. That's, I would say, 40% of our food waste is in residential homes, and only 50% of Ottawa has access to the green bin. So that's 20% of our food waste is getting diverted away from landfill and going into the big composter. The rest of the 80% comes from places like this. It comes from offices, commercial, all your grocery stores, your restaurants, your kitchens. That's the majority of food waste, and it's all getting tossed into landfill. So what I am here to talk about is the importance of food waste, because food waste is great because it can build healthy soil, and that is the picture that we are all missing. And I never realized this before starting the Box of Life, because I thought food goes into landfill and just composts in landfill, right? That's what I thought. I was wrong, obviously. But then when I started thinking about composting, I looked at it from the lens most of us look at composting, which is waste management. How do we get rid of our organics and put it into a composter? Little did I realize that it's not really the end of anything. Composting is literally making soil and coming to the point of our interactions with the land, and the land that we call home, and the unceded lands that we all want to love and respect. The biggest way that we can do that is by literally feeding the land, and we forget to do that. Composting is a word I do not like because it has so many negative associations with it. I just like to call it soil building. That's what it is. We are building soil with the help of our food waste, and that's the summary of this entire conversation. Now let me tell you how we can do that. Next slide. So just to break the ice, my favorite dinosaur is the T-Rex. And I love dumplings. I came to Ottawa in 2019, so I need to change that slide. I'm not that new now. Next slide. So our mission with the Box of Life is to create circular food systems where food waste becomes soil, soil becomes food, we consume it, and it's just like nature intended us to do. We're doing that by empowering people. It's all about y'all. It's not me. It's people that can compost, because unfortunately, as much as I'd love to, I cannot compost everyone's food scraps. But I can teach people how to do that. And by composting, I think we can solve the climate crisis. And the reason for that now is very interesting, because if 4% of our fields in the world were to switch over from regular agriculture to regenerative agriculture, which relies heavily on adding compost as fertilizer, the lands that those 4% of the fields are on can sequester all the emissions that our societies generate. Because our land has a tremendous capacity to absorb and lock carbon in the land for a long period of time. So I think of it as compost is great for waste management and all that fun stuff, but essentially you're creating tiny power plants in your front yards, in your backyards, on all lands that we have in front of us. That's actually actively sequestering carbon. And that is why we can solve the climate crisis, by just composting. So we are building community, and I think the biggest way to get composting to become mainstream is to create a culture change. And to create a culture change, we have to have space. And so we have space, and we're using that space to host workshops. We have a big worm farm in there. We are hosting other organizations in our space for events. And lastly, we have many, many types of composters. So the problem is that people find composting confusing, icky, and complicated. The other problem is that, yes, we are sending food waste to landfill, and that is unsustainable. And coming to food security, our soils are shit. We are treating our soils like, our soils are a mine. And if we keep extracting from it, there will be nothing left. And so we have 60 years of arable soil left in this, on this planet we call Earth. So that's 60 years. The next generation is going to be eating food made in vertical grow towers without soil if we continue down this path of destroying the land we live on. Next slide. Our solution is the closed loop, and we are deeply inspired by nature because nature knows solutions to all our problems, and our solution is what we find in the forest floor. You have this diversity of microbial life, you have earthworms, and you have an understanding of how the systems interact with each other, and what you get is a worm farm. So vermi-composting is one of the best ways to compost. It takes 30 days. The worms do all the work for you. And because we do not have forests in our homes, we have to pick and choose the earthworms we want to use. So we use only the special composting earthworms. And we actually have a big-ass worm farm in the back there. There are probably hundreds of thousands of worms in there. And you're sitting in a room filled with worms and it's not smelly. There are no smells, there are no bugs, and it's a pretty cool process. So if anybody wants to check it out, we can see it later. But essentially, yeah, we grow food. The worms digest the food scraps, and they poop out worm castings, which if I gave you a sample of, you would not realize it's worm poop. You'll think it's soil. It is a big component of soil. And we can use that to grow healthy plants. How many grow food or grow anything? And how many feel like the food is not growing as well as it should? It's not your fault. Because when you go out to the green belt or you go out in the forest, the Agongo National Park doesn't come and say, oh, sorry, I have a brown thumb, that's why everything has died in front of us. It's not our fault that how we grow is difficult, because we are not focusing on the soils. We just focus on the seed, and we focus on watering, and we focus on fertilizers with chemicals, but we don't think about what our food is growing in. So trust me, go this season, just fix your soils first, feed the soils, and the soil will feed your plants. And intuitively, once I've said that, it should make some sense that plants also need food. Soil needs food, and a simple solution is just add some compost into your soils, fix it up. How many of you actually grow in your backyards in Ottawa without raised beds? Yeah, so all of you that are doing that, you might want to check your soils, because most of our soils are so contaminated with heavy metals and all this other stuff that the city recommends you do not grow food in the soil. And that's a scary world to live in, when you can't grow anything in the land. And they ask you to build something above it, close off access, and then grow everything in fresh soil. That's just a byproduct of the society we live in, but I diverge. We can fix it. Microbes have an incredible ability to heal, and they can heal our backyard soils as well. So I don't recommend growing food immediately with compost in your soils yet, but the more compost you add into your soils, the cleaner the bacteria can make it. Next slide. So I'm a big fan of vermi-composting. I have tried all types of composting, and I think worms are the best, because I am an inherent lazy person, and the worms can do everything for me, so I let them do it. It's a very efficient process. It takes only 30 days to compost almost everything you give them. Unlike backyard composters that I have spoken to people about, who say that they have 5 different types of composters in their backyards, and I'm like, 5 composters? That's not possible unless you are a small village. But they have composters that are lying there for years and years not doing anything. And that's because they don't know how to compost properly, and also those outdoor systems don't work for 6 to 7 months of the year when it's frozen outside, because bacteria rely on heat, and they rely on having constant temperatures to do their decomposition. So a worm farm is great because you can keep it inside your house, inside your spaces, and have year-round composting. There are no odors. Go and stick your nose in that worm farm. It's hygienic, there are no bugs or flies, and the end product is great. It feels like cake batter, and it's just so much fun to put your hands in there and sense and feel what's happening, and just the satisfaction you get knowing that like icky banana peel became this. That's magical. It really changes the way you think about the world. Next slide. So we focus a lot on different aspects, different ways to compost, because a one-size solution cannot fit all. So you can compost at home with a worm farm. That's the one we make. I'm not here to advertise. Next slide. The next phase is slightly bigger. What else can we do? That's a question a lot of our customers are asking. They're like, yes, we compost everything at home, but now what else? We want to do more. So we've come up with a community composting model, which surprisingly Ottawa does not have. Of all the major cities in the world, in North America, Ottawa does not have any sort of community composting system anywhere. I don't think ours is the first, but there is no organized way of doing this. So this is the driveway of our shop where 15 to 20 neighbors are coming and dropping their food scraps off, and I spend like an hour every week just feeding it into the big hot composter, balancing it with wood chips and leaves that are just lying around, and I get beautiful compost. And I don't have any rats, I don't have any complaints from our neighbors, and this is a residential area that I live in. Rather, this is a residential area that the shop is at. This year, though, we're hoping to change things because we did receive a small grant from U Ottawa, and we are launching Ottawa's, I think, first and only community composting model, where we hope that this volunteer-run model can be put in different community gardens. Because one thing, I don't know if anyone noticed, in all the images of the gardens, there wasn't a single composter anywhere. So we're trying to change that. And all gardens need to have compost because, again, think of it as a mine, and if you don't add anything back into it, it's going to dry out. Next slide. This is a cool new project that we're starting, which is now fine, you don't want to do it at home, fair. You don't have a community garden nearby, fair. Maybe you have an office, and offices have coffee machines, and you eat food and you toss it away. You can actually compost all of that in our office worm farm, which can just stay inside your office, and it's a rental, so there are no commitments. If you want to try it out, try it. If people like it, great, you keep doing it. If you don't like it, give it back to us. And we are here to teach you how to build habits and to maintain it properly. So it's not like I'm going to give you something and then walk away after like a minute and say, now it's your problem to deal with. That's not how we work. And yeah, this is the system that we have actually at the back. Next slide. And last thing is, what else can we do to spread awareness and raise awareness on this topic? And that's where we partner with nonprofits and other social enterprises to help them incorporate composting into their business plan. So Social Harvest is a prime example. I've started working with them for 3 years now. Like they're one of the first clients we had, and they've got massive worm farms everywhere. And over the years, I've seen their projects go bigger and bigger, and now they get senior volunteers from the old age home next door who come play with the worms every week. They spend time chopping up food scraps. They collect food scraps from coffee shops nearby. They collect food scraps from the entire office building. It's at the Rideau Rockcliffe Community Center, the former high school there. And so just one small idea of like you can compost has become this really big project now, and we have actually started selling worm castings because they have literally tons of it now that they have created. So we're hoping to redistribute that back into the community. Worm castings are revenue generating, so anybody that runs nonprofits, money is a big problem. So you can actually create revenues from waste, literally waste. And you can actually create revenues and have a positive impact through this. Next slide. Lastly, I'll just leave you with this. Composting is good for you. It's amazing for your plants. If anyone has tried worm poop in their plants, you'll know what I mean. If you've never tried worm poop, just go out and do it. 1 spoon into a small size plant, you'll see the results in less than a week. It is magic, that's what I say. And lastly, it's great for the planet. It is something that societies have to do moving forward, because we all eat, right? Like if we all eat, we all generate waste, and we have to figure out a way to deal with our waste. And organic recycling via composting is the easiest way to deal with any kind of waste we have. Trust me, because I've tried recycling so many other things, but the worms can handle food and they can handle paper, but they cannot eat metal and plastic yet. So until we find a natural solution for that, we can easily divert 50% or 60% of our landfills back into the soil, making healthy compost, making healthy plants, making healthy food. So I think I went over time, but I'd like to leave you with that. Thank you very much.